Welcome to WagerTalk TV. I am Kelly Stewart, joined by Steve Merrill at Steve Merrill, 2 R's, 1 L on Twitter, and Tony Mejia at Mejia Dinero. I'm going to start with you first, Steve. We have the Tennessee Titans, and as you saw in the graphic, they opened a 3.5-point underdog, now a 6-point underdog in Seattle, total 54. I was against this Titans team on their regular season win total. I was against this Titans team last week. But if this number ticks much higher, I might be a Titans fan this week. Tell me your thoughts on this matchup.
Well, Kelly, I always say, week 1 of the NFL is the most random week. Other than week 17, now it'll be week 18. But, we see results in the first week that often don't correlate to the rest of the season. And I've always said that it's basically week 5 of the preseason. Well, this week it was week 4 of the preseason, which I guess you could say made it even more random. And that was the case. We saw a record number, at least in the last 25 years, of underdogs cover and win outright. So I think we have to be careful not to overreact too much to what we saw in week 1. And one of those results, which I think won't quite correlate, is the Titans getting blown out by Arizona. I do think Arizona will be a good team, but Tennessee is one of those favorites that lost outright, and they did so by 25 points. So not a surprise that we see the line moving. Obviously, the public wants nothing to do with the team that just lost outright as a favorite. Meanwhile, Seattle last week was actually the 4th most public play in the NFL. It was a game that was just a bit outside from making the cut for my NFL public video. And the Seahawks got it done. And there was a lot of love for them. When the public wins, they come back even stronger the next week. So not a surprise that we see this line moving. With that said, I'm going to stay off the side here. I think the total is the best way to go. It's tough to play the under in the NFL nowadays. I had the over in the Arizona-Tennessee last week. It's going to be one of the worst bad beats I've had all season. Put it out at over 53.5. It was 38-13. That's 51 points mid-third quarter. All I needed was a field goal in the final 18 minutes, and they couldn't score. I think we see more scoring this week. We saw that Tennessee defense really struggle, but more importantly, I think the Tennessee offense wakes up this week. I like the over in this one. It's in that mid-50s range again. It's right around 54. Let's hope we don't have to sweat a field goal over the last 18 minutes. I think we get the over this week.
Steve, I like the over as well here. Tony, this one is tough for me because I, again, said I had a regular season win total under on the Titans. I don't necessarily want them to get the win here, but I also have a bet on Seattle not to make the playoffs. Seattle did look pretty good last week against some very mediocre Colts team, which we'll get to in another video, but your thoughts on these two teams?
I just don't see Taylor Lewan playing much better than he did in week 1, even though he went on Twitter and said, thanks, Chandler Jones, for kicking my ass, because he's coming off a torn ACL, and he looked it. He sat out some plays in the third quarter. The reason why Steve and I both lost on that over in heartbreaking fashion was because they couldn't buy any time for Ryan Tannehill to do anything, even in garbage time, where you figured that you'd at least get a field goal or a cheap Tennessee touchdown down the stretch. But the fact is Derrick Henry had no room to run. Lewan gave up 2 of the 5 sacks that Tannehill suffered. And it was just one of those instances where Tennessee couldn't accomplish anything offensively. And defensively, they lost safety Armani Hooker. Now ex-Seahawk Bradley McDougald is starting his place. Bud Dupree is not practicing this week, one of their key linebackers. Harold Landry, another linebacker who is one of their top pass rushers, also limited. David Long, limited. So they're going into Seattle with a limited linebacking core, really a bunch of issues on the offensive line, and they're facing a quarterback that absolutely looked dominant in a win over Indianapolis. What Russell Wilson was able to do was tremendous in terms of just taking what the defense gave him. And I think the defense is going to give him a lot. We saw new offensive coordinator Shane Waldron mix in more play action than we've ever seen from the Seahawks. And it just looked like a sharp offense. The Seahawks hit Carson Wentz 15 times and registered 4 sacks. So you see that their pass rush is on point to start the season. I just think the Tennessee offensive line isn't ready for that right now. Russell Wilson is in midseason form, and there's rain in the forecast, so that might throw a little bit of a wrench into things. But other than that, this can get up to 6.5 and all feel comfortable. Obviously, if you got it at 5.5, or better yet at 3.5 where it began, you're in better shape with the Seahawks. But Pete Carroll turned 70 midweek. I think the Seahawks have another present in store for him this weekend with a blowout win over Tennessee.
All right, great stuff from Tony and Steve. Make sure you check out all of our other videos over on the WagerTalk YouTube channel.